Men aren't becoming colder, they're becoming clearer, and the truth they're waking up to about modern women is something no one wants to talk about. Something strange is happening quietly, almost silently, in the background of modern life. Men from different cities, careers, and ages are beginning to feel the same shift at the same time. They're noticing patterns they never paid attention to before. Behaviors they once dismissed now feel impossible to ignore. And for the first time in decades, men aren't brushing it off. They're actually stepping back, thinking deeply, and asking themselves a question they were taught never to ask. What is really going on here? Section 1. The awakening. No one expected. This awakening isn't loud. It's not angry. It's not hateful. It's calm clarity, the kind that comes after years of confusion. The kind that appears when a man finally stops trying to make sense of things that were never meant to make sense in the first place. For years, men were told they were the problem. If a relationship failed, it was on them. If a woman was unhappy, they needed to work harder. If things felt unfair, they were told to man up and push through it. And men did. They pushed. They tried. They sacrificed. They carried the weight without complaint. But you can only ignore reality for so long. Because now men are finally noticing how drastically the dating culture has changed, how expectations have shifted, how the roles they were raised to fulfill no longer match what modern women claim to want, and how the rules keep changing, but somehow the blame always stays the same. Men are waking up to a painful truth. They were never playing a fair game. They are realizing that loyalty doesn't get rewarded anymore. Effort doesn't mean appreciation. Stability doesn't mean security. And love doesn't guarantee respect. They are seeing how often they are treated as placeholders, backups, emotional support systems, and financial safety nets. And this awakening is spreading fast, not because men are talking, but because they're experiencing the same things. The clarity is uncomfortable, but necessary, because once a man sees the truth, he can't unsee it. And once he understands what's really happening, his entire path forward begins to change. Section 2. The new rules women created and don't want to follow. One of the biggest things men are waking up to is how modern dating now runs on a set of rules that make absolutely no sense. Not because they're complicated, but because they only apply to men. Somewhere along the way, the expectations shifted, the balance disappeared, and a new system quietly took over, a system built on contradictions. Women today are told to be independent, empowered, and self-sufficient. They're taught they don't need a man for anything, but in the same breath they expect men to carry all the responsibility. The emotional responsibility, the financial responsibility, the social responsibility, even the responsibility for how the relationship feels. It's a strange double standard. I don't need a man, but the man I choose better do everything. Men are noticing this. They're noticing how modern dating asks them to play two roles at the same time: protector and villain, provider and problem, leader and punching bag. They're expected to step up but never speak up, expected to give everything, but questioned for wanting anything back. The rules sound empowering on the surface, but underneath, they only move one direction. A man must be emotionally intelligent, but a woman can say anything in the name of being real. A man must control his reactions, but a woman's reactions are always justified. A man must respect boundaries, but if he sets his own, he's controlling. The message is clear. Men must adapt, but women don't have to. And this is the part men are finally calling out, not with anger, but with recognition. They're seeing how modern dating has become less about partnership and more about leverage, less about shared effort and more about one-sided expectation, less about teamwork and more about testing what a man can tolerate. But here's the twist. These rules were never meant to be followed, they were meant to be convenient. And men are waking up to that reality. They're realizing the game is rigged, and the only winning move is refusing to play by rules that were never designed to be fair. Section 3. Standards without reciprocity. More than ever before, men are waking up to a new reality in dating. The expectations keep rising, but the reciprocity keeps shrinking. Modern women often talk about what they deserve, what they're owed, and what a man should bring to the table, but the conversation rarely includes what they bring in return. It's not that men fear high standards. Men actually admire them, but they're starting to notice how those standards only go one way. A man is expected to be stable, confident, emotionally mature, financially secure, fit, funny, ambitious, and perfectly patient, yet he's supposed to accept whatever version of her shows up. No effort required, no accountability needed, just unconditional acceptance. The imbalance is impossible to ignore. Men are realizing that many modern standards aren't rooted in reality, they're rooted in entitlement. Women want a man who makes six figures, but they're offended if he asks for basic decency. They want a leader, but they resist being led. They want a protector, but they resent needing protection. They want commitment, but don't offer consistency. And the most alarming part? These expectations come with zero reflection. If a man doesn't meet her standards, he's not good enough. If she doesn't meet his, he's shallow, controlling, or insecure. Men are finally stepping back and asking a simple question. What do I get in return for everything I'm expected to be? And too often the answer is nothing meaningful. Not peace, not appreciation, not loyalty, not partnership. Instead, men find themselves giving and giving while receiving criticism, comparison, pressure, or emotional chaos. This is why so many men are walking away, not from women, but from unbalanced relationships that drain them. They're tired of trying to earn affection that should come naturally, tired of being evaluated like a product while being told they shouldn't have preferences of their own. The truth is becoming clearer every day. A relationship without reciprocity isn't a relationship, it's a transaction, and men are finally refusing to participate in transactions disguised as love. Section 4. Emotional labor, the silent burden men carry alone. There's a type of work men have been doing in relationships for decades without ever naming it. It's not financial, it's not physical. It's emotional labor, the unpaid, unnoticed, and unappreciated job of holding everything together. Men are waking up to how heavy this burden really is. They're realizing how often they are expected to be the emotional anchor for someone who gives them nothing to hold on to. They're expected to absorb breakdowns, regulate moods, soothe insecurities, fix anxiety, and respond perfectly to every emotional shift, no matter how unpredictable or unfair. Men were told this was love. Men were told this was their role. Men were told this was what real men do. But suddenly they're seeing the truth. It's not love if only one person is doing the emotional work. Modern culture teaches women to express everything and men to absorb everything. A woman can say she's overwhelmed, stressed, irritated, angry, confused, or insecure, and it's valid. A man says the same thing, and suddenly he's too sensitive, emotionally weak, or not a real man. So men silence themselves, not because they want to, but because they feel they have no choice. And that silence becomes its own form of emotional labor, carrying feelings they can't express, questions they can't ask, and pain they can't share. Men are noticing how often they are expected to be therapists but never patients, expected to be strong but never supported, expected to listen endlessly but never heard in return. And the most painful part, when a man finally opens up, rare, vulnerable, honest, many women use it against him later, not intentionally, but because they were never taught how to hold a man's emotions with care. So men stop trying, not out of anger but out of self-preservation. This awakening isn't about blaming women, it's about men finally recognizing the emotional imbalance they've been carrying alone. Because a relationship without shared emotional labor isn't partnership, it's emotional servitude. And men are done being the only ones holding the weight. Section 5. How modern culture weaponizes men's good intentions. One of the most alarming things men are waking up to is how easily their good intentions can be twisted against them. In today's culture, a man trying to do the right thing can end up punished for it. The very qualities that once made a man valuable, kindness, loyalty, patience, generosity, are now interpreted as weaknesses to exploit. Men are starting to see that when they give, many modern women don't appreciate it, they expect it. And when they go above and beyond, instead of gratitude, they get entitlement. A man compliments her, she thinks he's trying too hard. A man commits to her, she assumes she can do better now. A man provides stability, she grows bored and starts looking for excitement elsewhere. Modern culture has flipped the script. It tells women that any effort a man makes is simply the bare minimum. Meanwhile, anything she does, no matter how small, should be celebrated like a miracle. And men are noticing how dangerous this mindset is, because the moment a man shows genuine care, he becomes easy to manipulate. The moment he shows loyalty, he becomes replaceable. The moment he sets his pride aside, he becomes someone to test, not respect. Men are waking up to how culture encourages women to view relationships like power games. Whoever cares less wins. Whoever holds affection hostage holds control. Whoever provides the least receives the most. It's a system designed to reward emotional detachment and punish sincerity. And men who grew up believing that love meant effort are suddenly realizing something brutal. Effort doesn't matter unless it's appreciated. Men are learning that being a good man won't protect them from being used. A pure heart won't protect them from manipulation. Good intentions won't protect them from being taken for granted. But this awakening isn't turning men cold. It's making them smarter. They're learning to give only where effort is matched, to love only where loyalty exists, and to invest only where respect is mutual. Because a man's intentions should never be weapons used against him. Section 6. The rise of performative femininity. Men today are waking up to a strange new pattern in modern dating, something subtle but unmistakable. It's what many are now calling performative femininity. It looks like softness, warmth, and affection on the surface, but it's not real, it's an act, a temporary performance designed to get attention, validation, or benefits without offering genuine partnership. Men are noticing how often women mirror the image of a good partner without actually being one. They say the right things, they post the right quotes, they act sweet in the beginning, but when it comes time to show consistency, effort, or emotional accountability, the performance slips. It's affection without commitment, interest without investment, connection without responsibility. A woman can talk about wanting a stable man, but vanish the moment things require effort. She can say she values communication, but shut down when the conversation isn't flattering. She can pretend to be supportive, but disappear when he needs her the most. Men are seeing how often femininity is now used as a brand, not a behavior. It lives on Instagram, not in real life. It shows up for date nights, but not during hard moments. It's loud online and silent in the relationship. And the more men experience this, the more they understand a painful truth. Some women don't want a partner, they want an audience. They want the appearance of being desirable without the effort of being dependable. They want the perks of romance without the responsibilities of love. They want the loyalty of a good man while living like they're single. And men are waking up fast. They're learning to look past the act. They're watching for consistency, not charm. They're valuing actions over aesthetics. They're noticing who shows up and who only performs. Performative femininity might fool men at first, but never forever. Eventually the mask cracks and the truth reveals itself. And when it does, men aren't fighting for the illusion anymore. They're walking away from it. Section 7. When men stop chasing, the illusion breaks. There's a moment in every man's life when he stops chasing, and everything becomes clear. It doesn't happen suddenly. It happens slowly. After one disappointment too many, one betrayal too deep, one realization too sharp to ignore. And when that moment arrives, something powerful happens. The entire illusion of modern dating collapses. Men are waking up to how much of today's relationship dynamic depends on them chasing. Chasing attention, chasing approval, chasing validation, chasing a woman who gives just enough to keep him interested, but never enough to build something real. But the moment a man stops chasing, everything shifts. Suddenly, he sees who actually valued him, and who only valued the energy he provided. He sees who wanted him, and who wanted the lifestyle attached to him. He sees who loved him, and who only loved the attention she got from being wanted. Men are realizing that when the chasing stops, so does the manipulation, the late replies, the mixed signals, the breadcrumb affection, the emotional push and pull. It all disappears the moment he stops playing the game. And that's when the truth shows itself. If she cared, she steps forward. If she didn't, she fades instantly. If she ever intended to build something real, she makes it known. If she only enjoyed the attention, she moves on to the next source of it. Men are beginning to understand that silence reveals everything. A man who no longer chases becomes a mirror. He reflects the woman's true intentions back to her. And most modern women don't like what the mirror shows, because without a man chasing, she must offer something real, something honest, something deeper than aesthetics, status, or convenience. And many aren't prepared for that responsibility. So men are stepping back, not out of fear, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. They're learning that if a woman truly wants him, he won't have to chase her. She will meet him halfway, and if she won't, he finally understands that walking away isn't losing her, it's finding himself. Section 8. The cost of loving the wrong woman in 2025. Men today are waking up to a truth they were never warned about. Loving the wrong woman doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your identity. In 2025, the cost of choosing poorly has never been higher. Not because relationships are harder, but because the emotional risk is greater. Modern dating isn't built on trust or loyalty the way it used to be. It's built on convenience, options, and impulse. And when a man gives his heart to someone who doesn't value those things, the impact is brutal. Men are realizing that the wrong woman doesn't just leave you, she takes pieces of you with her. She takes your confidence by constantly testing you. She takes your peace by making every day unpredictable. She takes your energy by turning love into emotional labor. She takes your focus by making you question yourself instead of building your life. And the scariest part? You rarely notice it happening until you're drained. It starts small, a dismissive comment, a lack of appreciation, a shift in tone, a growing sense that no matter what you do, it's never enough. Then one day you look in the mirror and you don't recognize the man staring back. Your spark is gone, your ambition is dull, your patience is exhausted, your self-worth is damaged. This is the hidden cost men are waking up to. Loving the wrong woman can take years off your life without you realizing it, Because the wrong woman doesn't break you loudly, she breaks you slowly. She breaks you through constant comparison, subtle disrespect, emotional inconsistency, and taking your presence for granted. She breaks you not through one big betrayal, but through 1,000 small ones. And when it's finally over, men are left rebuilding everything from scratch: their mindset, their confidence, their routines, their purpose. This is why more men are stepping back, not because they fear love, but because they fear losing themselves again. The wrong woman costs too much, and men today are finally learning that protecting their peace is more important than trying to save a relationship that was never real. Section 9. Why modern women are losing good men without realizing it. A quiet shift is happening, and most modern women don't see it. They think good men are disappearing. They think men don't want to commit. They think guys today are immature, afraid, or not serious. But the truth men are finally waking up to is far simpler. Good men aren't disappearing. Good men are walking away. Not because they hate women, not because they fear relationships, but because modern dating has made them feel unwanted, unless they're providing something. Men are realizing how often they are treated as backup plans, emotional insurance policies, financial safety nets, or attention sources. They're noticing how loyalty is taken for granted, how consistency is ignored, and how genuine effort is met with boredom. Women today keep asking, where did all the good men go? Men know the answer. They went where they're respected. They went where effort is matched. They went where peace exists. Modern women are losing good men because many no longer know how to recognize one. They chase excitement over character, validation over loyalty, status over stability. They overlook quiet strength for loud confidence. They ignore the man who shows up because they're still waiting for the fantasy that never arrives. Men see this now. They're noticing how often they are judged harshly, but expected to judge gently, how their flaws are magnified, but hers must be accepted completely, how they must earn love, but she assumes she deserves it by default. And slowly, good men are realizing something they were never allowed to say. Being a good man is no longer enough, not in a culture that values attention over authenticity, not in a dating world built on endless options, not in an environment where appreciation comes only after a man leaves. Modern women aren't losing men because men changed. They're losing men because men finally understand their worth. And once a man realizes he brings peace, loyalty, effort, stability, direction, and emotional maturity, he stops tolerating anyone who doesn't value those things. Good men aren't gone, they're just done settling. Section 10. The new path men are choosing. Peace over permission. More than ever, men are choosing a path that previous generations never considered. A path that doesn't require approval, validation, or permission from anyone. A path built on something simple but powerful: peace. Men today are realizing that peace is more valuable than attention, more valuable than dating, more valuable than a relationship that drains them, and definitely more valuable than fighting for someone who treats them like an option. For years, men were told their purpose was to provide, protect, pursue, and prove themselves. They were taught that their identity was tied to how well they served others, but that mindset came with a cost, one that men are no longer willing to pay. They're learning that a man who protects his peace becomes stronger, a man who sets boundaries becomes respected, a man who walks away from disrespect becomes unstoppable. The old script is dying, the script where a man gives everything and receives bare minimum, the script where he carries the emotional weight of two people, the script where he sacrifices himself to keep someone else comfortable. Men now understand that love without peace isn't love, it's chaos. Commitment without respect isn't commitment, it's duty. Sacrifice without reciprocity isn't effort, it's self-destruction. So they're choosing a new direction. They're choosing solitude instead of emotional confusion, purpose instead of pleasing, focus instead of chasing, growth instead of chaos. And here's the part modern women aren't ready for. Men are no longer afraid to be alone. They're finding out that a peaceful life working on their goals, improving their health, building their finances, spending time with real friends feels better than a relationship full of arguments, manipulation, or inconsistency. This isn't men giving up, this is men waking up. They're learning that a relationship should add to their life, not drain it. That love should be mutual, not conditional. That effort should come from both sides, not just one. Men are no longer asking for permission to protect their peace. They're simply choosing it. Final message: what men must do next. The awakening happening among men right now isn't a trend. It's not a phase. It's not bitterness or anger. It's clarity. For the first time in a long time, men are finally seeing the truth about modern dating, modern expectations, and the modern definition of love. And the truth is simple. You cannot build a good life with someone who doesn't bring peace, respect, and reciprocity. Men are realizing that their time, effort, loyalty, and emotional strength are valuable. Not rare, valuable. And if those things aren't appreciated, protected, or returned, then walking away isn't quitting, self-respect. The alarming truth men are waking up to isn't that women are the enemy. That's not the message. The truth is that modern culture has normalized behaviors that destroy relationships while shaming men for noticing. It has encouraged entitlement, rewarded emotional recklessness, and taught men to stay quiet about their pain. But silence is over. Now men are choosing to speak through their actions, by setting boundaries, by refusing to chase, by expecting reciprocity, by choosing peace over chaos, by valuing themselves the way no one taught them to. And here's the part that matters most. Not all women are part of the problem, but only men who protect their peace will ever find the women who aren't. Good women still exist. Women who value loyalty, appreciate effort, communicate with maturity, and want partnership instead of power games. But you cannot meet those women while wasting your life on the wrong ones. So the next step for men is clear: choose wisely, walk away quickly, stand firm in your standards, and stop apologizing for wanting the same respect you give. You deserve a relationship that strengthens you, not one that drains you, one that feels safe, not chaotic, one that builds you, not breaks you. And if that relationship doesn't exist right now, solitude is not a punishment, it's preparation. Protect your peace, protect your purpose, and never again settle for someone who brings storms into a life you've worked hard to make calm. Because the truth is simple: men deserve better, and now they finally know it. If this message woke something up in you, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe and step into the brotherhood of men who see clearly, think deeper, and refuse to live blind. This is Psycore, where men come to evolve,